Welcome back to the chosen journey. The guy on the shirt, big money grip, Steve Karsay. I'm the co-pilot, the chosen lawyer. Steve, welcome back, buddy. We are on chapter 32 of this docu-series, believe it or not.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it, Jonathan? It's great to be back. Every week we continue to grow and we continue to talk about different topics, and it's been a pleasure so far.
We're covering the whole spectrum of baseball. Nothing is left unsaid or untold. We don't hold back, and the fans appreciate that very much. And it shows in the viewership and the comments back, and they know we're putting it out there. And every week there's something blowing up in baseball, or we go back to our life journeys. There's something always to kind of cover. For this chapter and for the following two chapters, unfortunately, we're supposed to have in a special guest, and we've learned along the way it is very difficult to schedule people. It's even more difficult to get them on the air, and something inevitably always seems to come up. We can let the cat out of the bag, I guess. We were going to have from the movie The Rookie, the actual guy whose movie was about was not the actor Dennis Quaid, although I'm sure he would have been fun to speak to as well. Jim Morris, The Rookie, the author of two books, one of them being this one here, Dream Makers. Great story as far as him and his life, and coming in as one of the oldest rookies ever, and having a Disney movie made about him. So he'll be back. He has some things he has to deal with, but pretty cool stuff. So you never know who's popping up on our show here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things where we continuously talk to people and we get them to commit and come onto the show and just give their perspective on whether it's life or baseball or whatever it might be, and just have a mixed bag so the people can listen to and tune in when they want.
We've been working diligently for months now to schedule a baseball Hall of Famer, one of the greatest of all time. Schedule never seems to work. We will find him. We will track him. It is going to happen. We will make baseball history. Stay tuned one of these days. It's just going to happen. Now, Steve, coincidentally, you're wearing a Brewers hat today. You do in
I
some
am.
episodes. I love that one with the yellow and the blue. Any background on that particular model you're wearing today?
No background on it. Yeah, it was just one of the ones that was, hanging up near me, and I decided to grab it. It's, we have some Brewer news, obviously that popped out yesterday, and obviously I've read it, saw what was happening. So, the Brewers hat was around, and I always love my Brewers, so I just put it on, and here we are.
You've read my mind, obviously, and you knew where chapter 32 was going to go. It was inevitable. So, before we go into this topic, I got to ask you, has ownership reached out to you yet and said, Steve, we're not very happy with you because you've chosen to make a life decision for yourself? You've opened up the floodgates, and other people have chosen to follow you in your journey and your steps. True or false? Has that happened yet?
False. It has not happened yet. So I don't think I was be getting any calls on that aspect. But when I read the story, and I didn't get to watch the MLB press conference, but I did get to read a lot of articles on it, and it really opened some eyes, and it really hit home for me, and had an understanding. And I thought to myself, I said, David Stearns and I aren't so different after all, are we? But it's just one of those things, right? I mean, he is who he is, and he's committed to giving everything he has for his job, and that job entails a lot. Like, listen, people think being president of baseball operations is one of those things where you just show up at the park and here I am, but no, it covers everything from the bottom to the top, and it covers international stuff, and he's always on his phone, and it takes up a lot of time. So the commitment is real, no matter what position you are in professional baseball, from a player to a coach to a front office, and even to the people who work at the stadium. There's a commitment there for a very long time that you have to be away from your family or from your loved ones.
For those people that may have been living under a rock or something, as far as in the world of Major League Baseball, we were in, full swing with World Series and with all the off-season chatter already starting up. But it's getting heated early because, as Steve has mentioned, David Stearns, the president of the Milwaukee Brewers, has decided to step down. Um, he's taking time away from the grind to spend time with his family and explore some other interests. I'm guessing, Steve, based on your last conversation with him at some point, or he went onto TikTok and was one of the 600,000 viewers listening to your heartwarm speech about how you chose to spend time with your son. And maybe David said to himself, you know what, Steve was onto something here. But at his age, like, let's keep in mind here, 37 years old.
Hmm.
Now, let's just take a look see here at his track record. Like, what a baseball lifer at 37 years old. Like 37, like Steve, I always think we're the same age, but you're actually in your early 50s, I'm not mistaken.
I am 50.
You are 50 on the dot. I am turning 46 this year. So we're still very, very young, but we're not as young as David Stearns. 37 years old, ninth GM in franchise history. He was appointed on September 21st, 2015, and was president in 2019. Going backwards now, and he never went without a job, by the way. So before becoming GM, assistant GM with the Astros 2013 to 2015. I heard they did okay and have been winning for quite a few years now. And he was the assistant GM. Director of baseball operations for Cleveland for a year, 2011 to 2012. Director of baseball operations does not sound like a chintzy job to me. Worked in the commissioner's office from 2008 to 2011. Baseball intern with the Pirates 0506, Mets 2008. Arizona Fall League assistant director 2007. By the way, he graduated from Harvard. I'm sure that didn't hurt. And like Steve Karsay, born and raised in New York City.
Very true. All of that is correct. Listen, David is super smart. Like he has a great understanding. He's a great communicator. He develops relationships, and he knows what he's talking about. I mean, he's been doing this for a very long time. Coming out of Harvard, obviously, he's had opportunities and he's worked in different areas. He's worked himself up, and he's gotten to a position at a very young age, and has done a great job up until being 37 and stepping down. And he'll continue to do a great job when he's ready to step back in. So he's taking an advisory role with the Brewers from what I've read, and that doesn't entail as much time. He's still under contract for another year, so again, anybody who reaches out that wants to offer him a job will have to go through the owner of the Milwaukee Brewers, Mark Antanasio, to get permission to do so, and that will be up to Mark whether or not he wants to do that. But at the end of the day, I think the commitment overall. And I'm just speculating and summarizing from what I've read. The commitment that he had to make, he was thinking about it a little bit and needed to take a breather and step back because he's probably been, running the pavement for, like you said, in his resume, since 2005, right? So that's, about almost 18 years, 17 years, 18 years, if my math is right, that he's been going and going and going. And being as young as he is, starting a family and his children, it can be tough.
And think about this. 20 years old, he started his career with baseball, joined the Brewers as GM at 30. Okay. Most people are lucky to run their own checking and savings accounts at 30 years old, maybe are thinking about buying their first home, are just happy to have work. He's a GM at 30. Unbelievable. Without having met the man, but looking at that resume, I'm sorry, you can be no dummy to be able to fill those roles and to do it consistently and never be out of work. And it never heard one word negative said about him as far as executive wise. Uh Brewers, if you look at their history, like he was only the ninth GM in their history. It's a loyal organization. Like you're there, and you think about when Gordash was there and before him, those guys were there many, many years. And I give the Brewers a lot of credit that way. And so it sounds like he's doing the right thing by the organization. Like you're saying, if I can't give 130%, I don't want to do this role right now. And on the same token of it, as you have children. He has young children. When are you going to spend that time with them? When you're going to be in your 60s and 70s and they already have their own families, so don't know what the future holds for him in that regard, but good on him to be able to make that assessment. Got to ask you, do you recall your first ever conversation with him?
I do.
Can you
It was
please share?
during an interview.
It was during the interview. So if you could share with us to bring up as far as your experience, it's first time you ever meeting him, where did you guys meet and how did that go down and your first impression of him?
Yeah, well, obviously, when you get a call to go and take an interview, there's a rigorous process that takes place, especially when they're hired coaches. Whether you're a manager or a coach, they want to know everything about you. So you have about 6 or 7 stations, about an hour with each department that you are going to have to deal with, and they sit down and ask you questions. So I just remember being in the conference room with David and just talking baseball and uh, having an understanding of where he's coming from, and he just wanted to get to know me a little bit better and open up and see if I was the right guy for the job. A few things that stand out to me in the conversation was a question he had asked. He goes, why do you want to do this? A simple question, but a little bit more elaborate once you get into it. When you think about it, he goes, you've made enough money in your career that you could probably step away and be at home all the time. But as I told you, and as I've told him in answering that question, that I'm very passionate about baseball. I love baseball. It's what I know. It's who I am, and it's the being of my soul of teaching and wanting to create an environment and help players get better to reach their potential, whether they're a 12-year-old or whether they're getting in the minor leagues or even in the big leagues. Everybody needs guidance. Everybody needs to hear maybe experiences that I've had that I could help them out with, that they're going through at that particular moment, being a young man in the big leagues and having all of this, whether it's pressure or whether it's a daily routine or what it might be, that I can just help them out with experience. And then we just had a conversation that elaborated a little bit further than that. And then the other question, and it really wasn't a question. One of the other things that I really took out of the conversation with David on that particular day in that conference room was he shared something with me that will stick with me for the rest of my life. And it's just one of those things. You brought up earlier, he grew up in New York, right?
Correct.
So obviously we all know what happened on September 21st, 2001 at Shea Stadium with myself when I gave up the home run to Mike Piazza. So we were having the conversation. He said, Steve, he goes, I don't really tell very many people about this. And I don't think he would mind me sharing this. It's not that big of a deal,
Mm-hmm.
but it's personal to him. And what drives him maybe a little bit is he told me, he goes, I was a junior in high school at the time, and I was at that game. He goes, that game changed my perspective and changed me for what I wanted to do. He goes, I knew after that home run at that very moment that I wanted to be in baseball doing something, whether it was playing, front office, scout, whatever it might have been. He goes, that's when I knew this is what I wanted to do because that moment touched him. And I was really taken aback by that and having an understanding of, the situation wasn't the greatest for me at that particular time and at that particular moment, but there was a greater feel for the city of New York, for people who were in the stands, for people who were watching that game. And sometimes we think it's just a game, but sometimes there are things that happen in life, whether it's taking from a sporting event that really touches home and changes people's lives. And it was a special moment. It was one of those things where I had to soak it in and think about it a little bit more when I left that room. But at the end of the day, to hear him talk about an experience he had that helped him grow and want to do something, um, at that particular time, at that particular moment, was really nice to hear.
It's pretty mind blowing if you think about it. Without that game, which you're there, he may not go into a baseball life. You may not meet and work together in Milwaukee. Like, it's amazing, how the universe kind of works itself. Did David indicate to you at the time growing up, was he a Mets or Yankees fan? I presume he was a Mets fan then.
I believe he was a Mets fan as well.
Well, currently, the New York Mets fans are dancing in the streets. The Yankees fans are not. And Mets fans are dancing in the streets because they have visions of David Stern showing up under their Christmas tree this year because they're applauding his arrival as the future president. They seem to feel that is a sure thing. I'm not betting on that yet, but you never know in life as far as challenges and everything else. If hypothetically, only saying hypothetically speaking, he was to go to the Mets, one of the first things is he may have a little bit more of a budget to work with over there.
Yeah, but hypothetically, he can't go to the Mets unless the owner of the Milwaukee Brewers lets him go to the Mets because he's still under contract for 2023.
Right.
So that being said, but you're right. The budget is a little bit bigger than what he has to endure in Milwaukee. And you've seen what he's done in Milwaukee with bringing players in and the analytical information that he has at his disposal with the platform that they have. So when teams have that kind of information and can kind of pull from that and understand who a player is, even though it's not a big name, possibly, obviously Rowdy Tellez is a great example of that. He was in Toronto's organization. At the time we traded for him, and he played a little bit the year we traded for him, but the next year, this year, which I was not there, but I heard that he really blossomed into a professional hitter and was super consistent in what he did and put up some serious numbers. So sometimes that information gives you an indication of who a player is, maybe if you see it or not. And he just has a really good knack at doing that. So if he can have that knack at doing that with, a $200 million plus payroll with the Mets, he put them in a really good position to be a winning franchise for a very long time.
And we talked about them in a previous chapter, but they're in the crossroads now with the rotation, with so many free agents impending. And even if he does not come there in 2023, being the hometown, likely growing up rooting for them, it's going to be hard to say no and at least consider it, I would say. If you're a smart guy, you've gone to Harvard. I'm not saying you're going to accept just any job, but certainly the right jobs come along and they come knocking, you're at least going to talk to them and say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to just slam the door in your face. So I'm pretty sure he'll have that conversation at the very least. Your first impression meeting him. So, did you guys speak on the phone before you met in the boardroom that day for the interview? And when you first actually met him in person, what was your actual impression of him? Like first glance talking to him?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I talked to him briefly on the phone when and before the interview process began. Nothing detailed, just more of, "Hey, how you doing? Looking forward to seeing you and having a conversation with you to see what you possibly can bring to the table, so forth and so on." And then, walking into the room, uh, you know, New York guy, you walk in and really reserved and just easygoing, sitting down. It's just like having a conversation at a bar with a beer in front of you and talking baseball. And that's how I felt like it was.
And sitting in that room, not just the two of you, I would assume.
No, it was just the two of us.
It was just the two of you. I would have figured that maybe counsel was in there or maybe the team owner. No, it was just the two of you.
It was just the two of us. So every team runs a interview process a little bit different.
Okay.
So I spent an hour with the general manager, which was David. I spent at that time an hour with the assistant general manager. I spent an hour with specialized groups, an hour with council. Talk to the video guys and what I needed for video or what I would want for video and how that matched up. I talked to the advanced guys. I talked to the director of baseball for the minor leagues. It was a 7 hour process, and I sat with each individual section of who they wanted me to talk to for an hour apiece. So
All on the same day.
all in the same day. You just go, you get shuffled from one place to another at the stadium, or wherever you do the interview process.
I imagine selling this interview process, it's more whoever's left standing at the end of these 7 hours, you got the job, because that sounds quite exhausting. If you think about most interview processes for people, you may meet with 2, 3 potential bosses over the course of 45 minutes, an hour. That's a heavy duty process there. Is that similar to other organizations, how they're doing it, or is that unique for Milwaukee?
It's unique. I think. I mean, I've only been on a few different interview processes. When I interview with Cleveland, some was done over the phone. Some I met with the pitching coordinator in the minor leagues that runs it. When I went with the Mets, I sat in the boardroom with all five, uh, GM, assistant GM, special assistant, and two of the advanced guys. So everybody's a little bit different on how they run their processes. I just know the one I went through with Milwaukee was very thorough, very detailed, and that's how they go through that process to pick a coach to help their team win and try to be the best that they can be.
I was joking with you off the air yesterday, asking you if David had given you that call yet, but I'm sure his phone is ringing a little bit off the hook right now, just a tad.
I'm
And
sure.
without speculating, without any direct knowledge of it, would you even dare to guess his baseball future at this point?
Listen, if I know David, he's just taking a breather. He's understanding where he's at and looking forward. He will be back in baseball. He will be at the highest position for a team at some point. I don't know how long that transition period might be, but the man's 37 years old. He's a Harvard grad. He's smart. He's built a team like the Milwaukee Brewers through some trades and free agent acquisitions and whatnot, and got them to a point where he can hand them off to Matt Arnold, the next gentleman who's taking over as president of baseball operations. So he knows what he's doing, and I think everybody in the circle of baseball understands what he's doing. But sometimes everybody just needs a little bit of a break as you're going through it.
You know, another guy that comes to mind as far as we go into the baseball genius land, and a guy I said, if you want to have your team win the World Series, you're going to load up the Brinks truck and you're going to call Theo Epstein. And look at his reputation in breaking the Red Sox curse, breaking the Cubs curse, and he's still very, very young, and he's consulting with the commissioner's office. He's working with private equity firms. He never has to work again as far as in the actual front office if he doesn't want to have a baseball team. He's done well enough financially for himself, I'm sure. But the itch is going to come inevitably, and an opportunity will come. And look at these guys out there, and they can write their own tickets. When you experience a certain level of success and you have that experience, you just wait your turn. But I would assume then he's probably going to call Theo at some point if they are friends, or even if not, and just kind of share their experiences together, I would presume, because Theo's done it. Theo walked away on his terms, and Theo can come back any point he wants. So I don't see it that much differently. On that same token, when he does take that future role, I'm sure Steve Karsay is going to be on that speed dial, and he'll say, "Hey, Steve, we can recreate that magic together." Like, imagine Steve Karsay, the pitching coach of the New York Mets, and Mike Piazza, the hitting coach. Like, that would be pretty cool. You guys can discuss that home run over and over every day.
Yeah, that's a long time coming. But anyhow, like, you're right. I think he can grow. I think he has a relationship with Theo, obviously being in the same division, and playing against each other, but always you're probably talking. They all talk. And when you're in the game of baseball and you step away for a little bit, it's not that you don't like baseball. You still love baseball. But sometimes it just consumes all you are and everything you are, and you don't get to breathe a little bit. And I think that's what I took from the article is he just wants to take a step back. He wants to breathe. He wants a little bit of understanding of who he is, and gets a little bit of time to spend with his family and friends. And then when the time is right or the situation is right and he gets a phone call, he'll get back in. and we all love baseball. I mean, I love baseball now, even though I'm not in. It's just a matter of what is the right situation that creates a balance for you and your family if that should happen to come to fruition.
Steve Karsay, how old were you when you got drafted again?
I was 18.
18 years old. And how old were you when you made your MLB debut?
I was 21 years old.
Looking now, if you think about how many years you've given this game as a player and then a coach, and think about as far as Mr. Stearns walking away at 37 right now, taking a breather, and looking when you chose to do it, you gave the game a lot of years. The game gave you a lot back, and this is the first summer in a long time have not being having gone through it this year and not being part of it. How often did the itch come back, or was it simply like enjoying the time?
I mean, there was early on, obviously, you miss certain aspects of what you've left for a little bit. I didn't miss it as much as I thought I was going to be honest with you, because I had my family and my son, and I was staying busy doing things. But you miss the competition, you miss the camaraderie in the clubhouse with the guys, and you miss the everyday interaction that you have with people that you care about in the clubhouse, whether it's the coaching staff, the players, or the front office, because you develop relationships on a daily basis that maybe you wouldn't develop outside of that, because you spend so much time with your coworkers, sometimes more than your family. So that's what I miss. What I didn't miss about it was the 162 game season, was being in a different time zone every 3-4 days. I didn't miss the plane flights across the country. I didn't miss being away from my family. Well, I did miss it, but I didn't miss the whole thing of being there and having them here. Obviously, I didn't miss living in a hotel for half the year. So those are the things I didn't miss in the whole transition into taking some time off. I still talk to those guys. I still have conversations with guys. I still text with guys, not only in Milwaukee's organization, but other organizations that I've developed relationships with from people who I've worked. A really good friend of mine is the pitching coach of the San Diego Padres, who I worked with Cleveland for 10 years. I talk to him all the time. Another good friend of mine is in the minor leagues with the Boston Red Sox running their pitching. I talk to him all the time. So any kind of information that I might need to help our 12-year-old team, I call these guys if I need some wisdom. But at the end of the day, relationships are what matter, whether it's in baseball or life. People who you can trust, people who you can go to, people who you can talk to. And there are a lot of acquaintances, right? We all have acquaintances, and we just need to understand at the end of the day who your friends are and who will have your back when things aren't going well in your life. And those are true friends, and those are the relationships that you want to develop, whether it's inside or outside of baseball.
I gotta tell people that our conversation wise off the air, and I figure at times Steve must be getting so sick of this, because every time an opening comes up, I'm right on it. I'm like, Steve, are you looking at this, buddy? Like, are you messaging them? Are they messaging you? And you're like, I know. It's because it seems like the baseball community is such a small one, and it's a fraternity. And as soon as somebody's departed or somebody's about to join, the word spreads real fast. So once I talk to you about it, you've already known long ago, and you're like, yeah, I know. And I'm like,
yeah, it comes out before it hits the papers, that's for sure. And people have and the people within the circles know really much before a paper does.
I gotta say this much about Steve Karsay, knowing him as a friend as long as I have, and our conversations. When Steve is given a secret, he takes the secret, puts it in the briefcase, locks it, chains it to his arm. Nobody's getting anywhere near it. I don't even know. And he's not doing it because he doesn't want to share. He's like, hey, it just couldn't come out there. Sorry about your luck, But that's good. That's why you're trusted. And that's why you built those relationships, obviously, in the community. And, the one thing that, like, I tell you, Steve, and I'll tell you this honestly now as your friend, I always dread that feeling when I open up the morning paper online and I'm gonna read Steve Karsay announces joining organization as blah 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 coach. And I'd be like, Steve, you didn't even tell me you interviewed with them. And you're like, I couldn't tell you. I'm sorry. You know?
You maybe find out a little bit before that. I don't know, but we'll see. It's just again one of those things where you always try to keep things that are happening close to the vest because it can really screw up things if it gets out somehow, some way, and it gets out somehow, some way in a silly way sometimes, right? If you just tell a friend or an acquaintance and they just happen to run into somebody and they say something and they know somebody and it happens to just kind of, especially in the circles of baseball, because the writers, the people who are on TV, everybody knows each other. So if everybody just has a conversation with somebody, maybe they bring something up without even thinking about it, and it's out of the bag, and that could, it could hurt anybody who's going through that process.
Absolutely. I say it in tongue in cheek, of course. I'm thinking outside the baseball community. There was a story, and I can't tell you the exact number, but when Beats by Dre was being brought out by Apple, I believe Dre told one of his friends posted it on social media. Apple was not impressed with that. I think there was $100 million haircut because of that. That's a
Mm,
lot. That's a lot of dough. Another one is, and I can think of it in the baseball community, like in any other organization, somebody is going to get named the pitching coach or the head coach of a team, but the current coach was not let go yet and finds out about it. That is very
exactly.
uncomfortable, and you do not
Hmm.
want to find out that way. I can tell you online from a lawyer end, if you want a really good story as we end this chapter, one of my lawyers was telling me that you find out a story where a couple is splitting up, which happens in divorce, right? Except when one of the spouses doesn't tell the other one until they're selling their house and it gets revealed during the signing process with the lawyer. And the other spouses look at the other one, are we getting a divorce? And they're on two different Zooms, and the lawyer's there. You would want to be as far away from that room as possible, but that's something you want to let out of the bag until they kind of had the chance to process it and everything else. So there's certain sensitive information, like somebody being let go. I was reading online, they work at a jewelry store, and they said, I went to my shift, I looked at the calendar, and it showed that I'm getting fired next week. One manager barked to the other one on the calendar. Except the problem is that's next week, and I'm still working my shifts, but here I know I'm about to let go. That's not so cool.
It's uncomfortable, I'm sure, by any means, no matter who you are and what place, what workplace you're in. If everything's done and it's just a surprise to you, it's never a good feeling.
Well, the next couple of chapters after this one, there's a lot of coaching talk right now, so we're going to keep the good times rolling. And for next week, we're going to be talking about a GM and coach and what is happening over there. So until next time, Steve, we'll keep living the chosen journey, and we'll talk soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jonathan. See you next time.